Up until that moment, my life had been steady, maybe even mundane, predictable in all the ways I thought I wanted. After 20 years of marriage, Natalie, my wife, a 39-year-old mother to our 2 daughters, shattered that calm. Sitting across from me in the living room, with an unsettling composure, she announced she had plans for the following evening. Plans to go on a date with a coworker. Natalie and I had been together since we were kids, just barely out of high school when we got married. A year into dating, she got pregnant with our first daughter, Chloe. We were too young and too scared, but we were also completely in love. That love carried us through those wild early years, scraping by, figuring things out together. My landscaping business grew into something far beyond what I ever imagined, a multi-million-dollar operation that let us give Chloe and her sister a life of opportunities. We built everything together, or so I thought. But now, the foundation of that life was cracking. Natalie sat there telling me she wasn't happy, hadn't been happy since the girls left for college. She said she'd been struggling with depression and loneliness. She hadn't told me any of this before. Not about the sadness, not about her coworker Andrew, the accountant who'd apparently been her shoulder to cry on. I didn't even know the guy existed before that night. Now she was telling me that he had become the person she leaned on when she felt overwhelmed. "I want to be honest with you," Natalie said, her voice low and quivering. "I need this. Just one night. I need to see what's out there. I don't know how else to explain it." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Her words didn't sound real. This was my wife, my partner for 20 years, sitting there asking me to understand her need to go on a date with another man. I clenched my glass of scotch tighter, the amber liquid swirling as I tried to keep myself together. She kept talking, as if explaining it more would somehow make it hurt less. "I'm telling you because I don't want to lie to you. I would never cheat, Lucas. I'll tell you everything afterward. But I need to do this for myself." It was the last line that broke me. For herself? I wanted to scream, to demand how she could be so selfish. But I didn't. I just sat there, the silence between us heavy and unbearable. When I finally stood, I didn't look at her. I finished my drink, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. "Lucas," she called after me, her voice trembling. "Don't walk away. This is happening whether you like it or not. I wanted to be honest with you." I stopped briefly, turning to look at her. She had pulled her knees to her chest, her face streaked with tears. But I couldn't bring myself to feel anything but a cold, detached anger. Without a word, I went upstairs. I threw a few clothes and toiletries into a bag, then headed back downstairs, where she was waiting by the garage door. "Please don't leave," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "This doesn't change anything. It's just one date. One night, Lucas. Can't you give me that after everything we've been through?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I got into my car and drove off, her pleas echoing in my mind but meaning nothing. That Thursday night, I checked into the Ritz-Carlton. It wasn't about the cost. I didn't care. I needed to be somewhere clean, somewhere quiet. I silenced my phone after sending Natalie one last message. "Don't try to contact me until I'm back Saturday." Then, I blocked her number. I needed time to think. Time to figure out what the hell I was going to do with the mess she just dropped into my lap.by Friday morning. I was already set on my course. There was no turning back now. I made sure to cut off every avenue of contact with Natalie. I told my assistant to screen her calls and instructed the office building's security team to deny her entry. My plan was in motion, and nothing was going to derail it. I've always been the person people turn to in a crisis, a fixer. At work, I'm the leader, the one who steps up and finds solutions. Among friends, I'm the guy who gets things done. But at home, I'd let myself become too passive, too accommodating. I had worked tirelessly to give Natalie a good life, treating her like a queen. Now I realized that my devotion might have been my biggest mistake. My next move was to call my brother Ethan. He's a detective down in Miami, and I knew he'd know how to help. I explained everything to him, laying it all out in brutal detail. He didn't waste a second before putting me in touch with someone, Matthew Blake, a private investigator with a reputation for discretion and results. "Matthew," Ethan said when he connected us on the phone, "this is my brother Lucas. He's in a bit of a situation and needs surveillance on his wife tonight. We need to know everything, who she meets, where she goes, and any dirt you can find on the guy. Can you handle it?" Matthew didn't hesitate. "Consider it done," he said, his voice steady and confident. He assured me that one of his best operatives would tail Natalie and provide live updates throughout the evening. That Friday evening, as Natalie prepared for her so-called innocent date, I set my own plan into motion. If she wanted to explore her options, I was going to show her I had options too, and I wasn't going to do it halfway. Through a divorced friend, I arranged the company of Vanessa, a high-end escort with a reputation for charm and discretion. She was everything I needed in that moment, a way to reclaim my pride and turn the tables on Natalie's betrayal. For 2 decades, I had placed Natalie on a pedestal. That time was over. She needed to understand what it felt like to be the one left behind. Meanwhile, back at our house, Natalie was preparing herself for the evening ahead. She convinced herself that I was overreacting. "He'll sulk for a day or two," she muttered, brushing out her hair in front of the vanity mirror. "But he'll get over it. He always does." In her mind, she'd already scripted how the next day would unfold, how she'd charm her way back into my good graces. The empty house was quiet as she went through her routine. For a brief moment, she considered canceling the date with Andrew and calling me to come home. But the thrill of anticipation surged stronger than her guilt. She decided to go through with it, rationalizing it as something she needed. She ran a warm bath, shaved her legs, and applied her favorite vanilla-scented lotion. Sitting at her vanity, she carefully applied makeup, the strokes of her brush transforming her face into one of alluring elegance. A smile played on her lips as she selected the perfect dress, a slinky, crimson piece she'd bought just for this occasion. She had never worn it before, the tag still attached. Paired with black stockings and a garter belt she'd never had the nerve to wear for me, she looked every bit the woman she wanted to be tonight. Her reflection in the mirror gave her pause. For a fleeting moment, memories of Valentine's Day's past surfaced. How I'd brought home a set of lingerie, hoping to rekindle some spark. She had scoffed at it then, calling it tacky. Now here she was, wearing something even racier for another man. The irony wasn't lost on her, but she brushed the thought aside. This wasn't about me, it was about her. As she zipped up her dress, a pang of doubt crept in. She hesitated, her hands brushing the fabric, as she stared at herself in the full-length mirror. Should she cancel? Was she about to make the biggest mistake of her life? The guilt threatened to bubble up, but she shoved it down, reassuring herself that this was just dinner and dancing. Nothing more. Then her phone rang. Seeing my name on the screen, she felt an odd mix of relief and anxiety. Against every instinct, I had called her to give her one last chance to fix what was broken. "Natalie," I began, my voice raw with emotion. "I'm calling because I can't do this anymore. Please don't go tonight. Stay home, and I'll come back right now. I love you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make you happy. If I've let you down, tell me how to fix it. Just give me this chance, for us, for our family." Her breath hitched, but she kept her composure. There was something strangely intoxicating about hearing me, her confident, capable husband, pleading with her. She knew I loved her, and she knew I'd forgive her. I always had. Oh, Lucas, she said softly, her voice trembling. I love you too, more than you'll ever know. But I need to do this for me. It's not about us, I promise. It's just one night, just dinner and drinks with a friend. Nothing more. Tomorrow, you'll see it wasn't a big deal. I'll be home tonight, and we can talk then. You're the only man I'll ever love. Her words were a knife to my chest. She didn't hear the way they sounded. She didn't see the damage they were doing. All I could manage was a quiet, "Goodbye, Natalie," before ending the call. As she set the phone down, she wiped a tear from her cheek and checked her reflection one last time. He'll understand, she whispered to herself. He always does. Back at the hotel, Lucas sat at the edge of the bed, his head in his hands, a storm of emotions tearing through him. Despite his heartfelt plea, Natalie had made her choice. She was out with another man, ignoring the pain she was causing him. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, and he grabbed it immediately. It was Matthew, the private investigator. Matthew had been stationed outside their house, keeping an eye on Natalie's movements. When Andrew's car pulled into the driveway, Matthew snapped a photo of the license plate and texted it to Lucas. Within an hour, Lucas had Andrew's home address, his phone number, and every detail he needed to know about the man. As Natalie climbed into Andrew's car, guilt began to gnaw at her. She glanced at him, his confident demeanor starkly contrasting with the turmoil she felt inside. "What's wrong?" Andrew asked, noticing her unease. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Tears welled in her eyes. "Lucas called earlier. He begged me not to go. I feel like I've already betrayed him." Andrew's charm was as calculated as ever. Leaning in with a practiced smile, he said softly, "Natalie, we don't have to do this if it's too much. But I promise, it's just dinner. Nothing more. I'd never want to come between you and Lucas. I respect you and your marriage too much for that." His words were honeyed lies, designed to soothe her doubts, and they worked. Natalie nodded hesitantly, letting his assurances ease her guilt. Yet deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that the night ahead would change everything. By 7 p.m., Natalie and Andrew were on their way to a downtown restaurant. Matthew, who had been tailing them, immediately sent Lucas their location. Over the next few hours, Lucas received a steady stream of updates. Photos arrived showing the pair laughing over dinner, holding hands as they strolled down the street, and stepping into a dance club. Each image cut deeper than the last. The final blow came when Matthew captured them slow dancing, their bodies pressed close as Andrew leaned in to kiss her. Lucas's heart broke as he stared at the images, his stomach twisting with rage and despair. By sunrise, he had all the proof he needed, photos and videos of Natalie's betrayal, evidence that obliterated any remaining hope for their marriage. At 8 p.m., unable to contain the anguish any longer, Lucas called Natalie's father, Michael. Over the years, Michael had been more than a father-in-law. He was a friend and a confidant. "Hello, Michael. It's Lucas," he began, his voice strained. "Lucas, good to hear from you," Michael replied warmly. "We're still on for golf this Sunday, right?" Lucas hesitated, the weight of what he had to say pressing down on him. "I don't think I can make it, Michael. I need to talk to you about something serious. Natalie, she's out with a coworker tonight. On a date." The line went silent for a moment. "Lucas, are you sure?" Michael asked, his tone skeptical. "That doesn't sound like my daughter." "I'm sure," Lucas replied, his voice heavy. "I've hired a private investigator. I have photos and videos. She's with this man, betraying me, our marriage, and our family. I wanted you to hear it from me before you found out any other way." Michael's voice was filled with disbelief and sorrow. Lucas, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. Maybe there's still a way to fix this. Natalie loves you. I know she does. Lucas exhaled sharply, the pain evident in his words. I've made up my mind, Michael. This is unforgivable. I'll call you soon to reschedule golf. Right now, I need time to figure things out. After ending the call, Lucas knew his next move. With the address Matthew had provided, he drove 20 minutes to Andrew's house. It was time for the truth to come out on all fronts. When Lucas knocked on the door, it was answered by a striking woman in her 30s. Megan, Andrew's wife, was dressed casually in fitted jeans and a lace blouse that accentuated her sharp, attractive features. Her confident smile faded as she noticed Lucas's grim expression. Can I help you? She asked, her voice wary. Lucas met her gaze, his resolve firm. Yes, Megan. I think you need to hear what your husband has been up to tonight. Mrs. Cooper? Lucas asked, his voice steady but solemn. Yes, that's me, Megan replied, her concern apparent. Is everything all right? Andrew is fine, Lucas reassured her, softening his tone. But I need to talk to you about something important. May I come in? Megan hesitated briefly before stepping aside to let him in. Inside, Lucas wasted no time. I hate to bring this to your door, but your husband, Andrew, is out on a date with my wife, Natalie, right now. She's admitted to leaning on him emotionally, and tonight they've crossed a line. Megan's face fell, her confidence crumbling into disbelief. Are you sure? She whispered. Andrew told me he was at his usual Friday poker game. Lucas nodded, his voice firm. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't certain. I hired a private investigator. I've seen the photos and videos, laughing over dinner, dancing, and more. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but I felt you had a right to know. Tears welled in Megan's eyes, the weight of her husband's betrayal sinking in. She gripped the back of a chair for support as Lucas continued. I know this isn't easy to hear, and I'm sorry to bring this into your life. But we both deserve the truth. Megan nodded numbly, her voice trembling. Thank you for telling me. I don't know what I'm going to do, but thank you. Lucas left Megan sobbing quietly, conflicted by a mix of guilt and vindication. He knew Andrew's actions had likely destroyed 2 marriages, but Andrew had made his choices, and now the consequences were falling into place. The next morning, Lucas sat in bed at the Ritz-Carlton, a cup of coffee in his hand, as he reviewed the investigator's photos on his laptop. Each image was a fresh wound. Natalie laughing in Andrew's arms, dressed to perfection, stockings he'd never seen before, dancing like she was falling in love all over again. There was no clear evidence of sex, but the betrayal was evident, and it cut deep. By 2 p.m., Lucas met Vanessa, the escort he'd hired, at the hotel. Over the next 2 hours, he laid out his plan in meticulous detail. Vanessa was everything Lucas needed, professional, discreet, and quick to understand her role in this painfully orchestrated drama. By 4 p.m., they were at Lucas's home. By 5 p.m., they were in bed. Before heading to the bedroom, Lucas carefully placed a handwritten letter on the front door. It read, Natalie, last night, you shattered our marriage vows and broke my heart. When you chose to betray me, our bond was destroyed. Legally, we may still be married, but emotionally, our relationship is over. You wanted freedom, and now you have it. I will stay in the master bedroom. Your belongings are now in the guest room. My bed and my space are no longer yours. I hope you're satisfied with your choices. Your former husband, Lucas. He laid his wedding band on top of the letter, then drove a collector's knife through the center of the ring, embedding it deep into the wooden door, a dramatic and unmissable message for Natalie to find upon her return. When Natalie arrived home at 10 p.m., her heart raced at the sight of the knife protruding from the door. She froze, her hand trembling as she carefully plucked the letter from beneath the blade. Her eyes scanned the words, her pulse quickening with every line. The weight of her choices, and the full scope of her betrayal finally hit her. Tears blurred her vision as she clutched the letter and the ring, her breath hitching with rising panic. She pushed the door open, calling out desperately, "Lucas? Lucas, please, I'm sorry. Let me explain." The house was eerily quiet, save for faint noises coming from upstairs. Her heart pounding, Natalie bolted toward the master bedroom, dreading what she might find. Throwing the door open, she froze in her tracks. There on their bed, a young woman was straddling Lucas, her hair cascading down her back. The intimacy of the scene was undeniable. Natalie's disbelief turned into a visceral scream. "How could you?" she wailed, her voice cracking with heartbreak. Tears streamed down her face as she stood paralyzed by the scene before her. Lucas didn't say a word. He simply met her gaze with cold indifference. Humiliated and overwhelmed, Natalie turned and fled, her sobs echoing through the house as she ran out the door and into her car. She didn't stop driving until she reached her sister Claire's house, where she collapsed in tears, the full weight of her decisions crashing down on her. Once Natalie had calmed down enough to speak, she recounted the devastating scene she had walked in on. Her voice cracked as she described seeing Lucas with another woman in the bed they had shared for decades. "I don't understand," she sobbed. "Lucas has always been so kind, so respectful. How could he do this to me?" Claire listened carefully, her expression growing serious. "This doesn't sound like Lucas," she said cautiously. "What's been going on lately that could have led to something like this?" Natalie hesitated, guilt rising to the surface. "I don't know. I guess maybe it's because I went out with a coworker last night. That's the only thing that makes sense." Claire's eyebrows shot up in shock. "A coworker? What do you mean by that?" Natalie's face flushed with shame. "It was just dinner and dancing," she stammered. "It wasn't romantic. Nothing happened." Claire's patience thinned. "Let me get this straight. You dressed up, left your husband at home, and went out with another man for dinner and dancing. And now you're shocked that he reacted like this? Natalie, what did you think was going to happen?" Natalie broke into fresh sobs, Claire's words hitting her like a sledgehammer. With trembling hands, she pulled out Lucas's letter and handed it to her sister. Claire read it silently, her frown deepening with each line. "You've made a huge mistake, Natalie," Claire said, her tone firm but not unkind. "I think you've put your marriage in serious danger over one reckless decision. But maybe there's still a chance to fix this. Stay here tonight, get some rest, and talk to him tomorrow. Just be prepared for the worst. Lucas isn't the kind of man to let something like this slide." Natalie spent the night crying in Claire's guest room, her mind racing with regret and shame. Every moment of her evening with Andrew replayed in her mind, now bathed in the harsh light of reality. Meanwhile, Claire decided to take matters into her own hands. She picked up her phone and texted Lucas, urging him to call her back. When Lucas returned her call, Claire didn't mince words. "Lucas, my foolish sister is here," she began. "She told me everything that happened, and honestly, I don't blame you for how you reacted. It's clear she didn't think this through." Lucas's voice was steady but cold. "Thanks, Claire. You know me. I don't tolerate betrayal." Claire sighed. "Look, Lucas, she knows she made a terrible mistake. She's an emotional wreck right now. Maybe you two can talk tomorrow? I'm not saying you have to forgive her, but if she hasn't gone all the way with this guy, maybe there's still a chance for counseling. At least hear her out." There was a long pause before Lucas replied, "Of course, Claire. She's welcome back to the house." it's still her home. But she won't be sharing my space anymore. I'm not angry, I'm hurt. I'll listen to what she has to say, but I can't promise anything. Right now, I feel as much hatred for her as I do love. It's going to take a miracle to fix this. I understand, Lucas, Claire said softly. Just don't make any decisions you'll regret later. And remember, she does love you, even if she's made a mess of showing it. Thanks, Claire. Send her home when she's ready, Lucas replied. Goodbye. The next day, I came home from the gym around noon to find Natalie sitting nervously at the kitchen table. Her car was parked out front, a clear sign she had been waiting for me. As I stepped inside, she attempted a smile, though her anxiety was written all over her face. You know we're not getting a divorce, she said, trying to sound confident. We can work this out. We love each other. I ignored her, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat down across from her. After a few quiet sips, I finally broke the silence. Natalie, it doesn't matter whether we get a divorce or not. The moment you broke our vows, our marriage ended. I don't see us as a couple anymore. You're free to do whatever you want, and so am I. The only difference is that you're not welcome in my bed anymore, and whatever we had physically is over. Lucas, I didn't do anything wrong. Andrew isn't my boyfriend, and nothing happened between us, she pleaded, her voice desperate. I shook my head, my tone unwavering. Natalie, you went on a date with another man. You wore lingerie, danced with him, held his hand, and kissed him. Whether or not you slept with him doesn't matter. The moment you stepped into his car, you killed our marriage. Natalie's face contorted with frustration, and she tried a different angle. It doesn't have to mean anything. Just give it some time, and we can fix this. Have you ended things with that woman you were seeing? She shot back bitterly. I laughed, the sound dry and humorless. You're the one who destroyed us, Natalie. You killed our bond the second you entertained another man. And no, I haven't ended things with Vanessa. She's young, exciting, and, frankly, the best lover I've ever had. She's shown me everything I've been missing. Natalie's jaw dropped, her shock palpable. How could you say that to me? She gasped. Oh, and here's the cherry on top, I continued, leaning back in my chair. While you were out with your not boyfriend, I went to see his wife, Megan. Did you know they have 3 kids? No. Well, Megan filled me in on Andrew. Apparently, you're the 3rd married woman he's seduced this year. Remember Heather from your office? She divorced her husband because of Andrew. So congratulations, Natalie. You've helped ruin 2 families and scarred 5 kids in the process. Her face turned ashen as the truth about Andrew began to sink in. She looked away, her shame unmistakable. But instead of owning her guilt, she lashed out. How dare you talk to me like this? You're no better than I am. You brought another woman into our home. You crossed a line, Lucas. That has to stop. I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. Cruel and hurtful? I repeated, my voice cold. Natalie, were your actions kind and loving? Were they respectful? No. So no, I'm not ending things with Vanessa. If you can't handle that, then maybe it's time you left. I'm not forcing you to stay. Natalie's tone turned frantic. Lucas, please. I'll do anything to fix this. I promise I won't see anyone else. I'll be faithful from now on. Just end it with her and come back to me. You promise? I replied, my voice laced with sarcasm. That's funny. You made a promise to forsake all others on our wedding day, Natalie. Remember that? Apparently, that promise didn't mean much when you climbed into Andrew's car. If you can't live with this arrangement, feel free to leave. Maybe Andrew has room for you, or Claire can take you in. But don't expect me to keep bending over backward for someone who has no respect for me. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her voice remained defiant. Don't you love me, Lucas? Don't you want to work through this? I know I made a mistake, but we can fix it. I'll do whatever it takes. Love? I said, my voice cold and distant. Natalie, I might still love you, but that love has been gutted by your betrayal. You shattered my trust. I begged you not to go, and you went anyway. You threw me aside like I didn't matter. And now, because you opened this marriage, I've discovered what it's like to be with someone who truly appreciates me. Vanessa makes me happy, Natalie. I don't think you can stand seeing me happy without you. And now you get a taste of the pain I've been living with. It's a bitter pill, isn't it? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. As for divorce, that's up to you. We can stay legally married and live as roommates, or I can have the papers ready by the end of the week. It doesn't matter to me anymore. Natalie's expression shifted as she realized she had no leverage. Over the next month, I continued to bring Vanessa home every weekend. Our passionate nights together reinvigorated me in ways I hadn't felt in years. Vanessa was vibrant, adventurous, and completely uninhibited. Natalie hated every second of it. She begged me to stop, but I ignored her pleas. Whenever Vanessa came over on Saturday nights, Natalie would leave the house, only returning after she was gone. To ease the tension, I agreed to text her when Vanessa left, but the hostility in the house was unavoidable. While I took a certain satisfaction in watching Natalie squirm, guilt began creeping in. I started to see my relationship with Vanessa for what it truly was, purely physical. The excitement was undeniable, but there was no real connection. The financial costs of maintaining the arrangement added to my growing doubts. On a Sunday night, as Natalie returned home, I decided to break the news. I've decided to end things with Vanessa. I told her flatly. But not for you. I'm just done with her. Don't get the wrong idea. Natalie's face lit up with hope, her hands trembling as she clasped them together. Lucas, thank you. I've been praying you'd come to your senses. I want only you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Please, let me prove that I'm the only woman you'll ever need. I crossed my arms, unmoved. Prove it? Natalie, do you even know what love is? Love isn't leaving your husband to chase excitement with another man. But I'll tell you what, I'll give us one last chance. I won't see anyone else while we go through couples counseling. If we can rebuild something real, maybe there's hope. Her relief was palpable. She surged forward, hugging me tightly and covering my face with kisses. Thank you, Lucas. I promise I'll make this up to you. I love you. Don't get ahead of yourself, I said firmly. I'm not forgiving you. This is just a chance to see if there's anything left to salvage. I've already scheduled an appointment with Dr. Harper for Tuesday. Twice a week for 3 months. We're going to dig through every part of this mess. Don't think for a second this will be easy. 3 grueling months of therapy followed. Natalie acknowledged the depth of the pain she caused, though she struggled with accepting that my actions were a direct response to her betrayal. I made it clear that her initial infidelity set everything into motion. While Dr. Harper criticized my decisions, I remained unapologetic. I would do it all over again if faced with the same situation. In the end, we reconciled under strict conditions. A postnuptial agreement was drafted. If Natalie strayed again, she would forfeit everything, our assets, the house, and even the car. She agreed to complete transparency. Her phone, emails, and texts would be accessible to me at all times. I made it clear that even a hint of emotional or physical infidelity would result in her immediate removal from my life. A year later, life had mostly returned to normal, though I kept a watchful eye on Natalie. Claire remained a key ally, supporting Natalie as she worked to rebuild my trust. Meanwhile, Andrew's life had completely fallen apart. Megan had filed for divorce, taking the house, securing full custody of their 3 children, and winning hefty child support and alimony payments. Andrew was left in a dingy studio apartment, drowning in debt and regret. He had lost everything over dinners, dances, and fleeting moments of passion. Natalie, realizing how close she came to losing everything, committed herself to probing her love and loyalty. She worked tirelessly to rebuild my trust, though the memory of her betrayal lingered like a scar. Once a cheater, always a cheater, echoed in my mind, making true forgiveness feel impossible. As for Andrew, his downfall felt like poetic justice. One night, he was found unconscious in a parking lot, bruised and battered. Whether it was karma or the result of another husband like me, it was clear that Andrew's charm had finally run out.